Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. Welcome to this week's live event. This is the time every week that is set aside for office hours. Office hours is what they used to call the time that you could go and talk with either your teaching assistant or university professor when I was back in university. And so I carry that tradition forward and host office hours once a week to give you a chance to ask questions, talk amongst yourselves, hopefully get some answers, chit chat about this, that, or the other thing. The chat is open, at least I think it's open, and hopefully we'll start seeing some people pop up, and that will then verify for me that it is in fact open. But hopefully, yeah, chat is open, and this is your time to ask questions. So please, be not shy. Be not shy. Hello, Heidi. Good to see you there. I was a little concerned that the chat was not working, but thank you for popping up and breaking the ice with the chat there. Hello, Susan. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you might be. Trying to think of any news to report for this week. No videos this week. It wasn't so much the holiday here as it was just being ridiculously busy with a bunch of different stuff. So I wasn't able to create some videos, but I'm gonna have a quick tip out next week for everybody. Hello, Mandy. No live event next week. I'm going to Yosemite. To hang out and do some camping. Yao Victor Oliveira, hello. Hopefully I pronounced your name reasonably close. I apologize if I did not. So yeah, be not shy, ask questions, talk amongst yourselves. I imagine that things will slow down slightly as we get into the holidays here and people are off with family and doing all sorts of things. Hey, Mandy. Yes, it has been a few. Hello, Natasha. Whoa, here we go. Striker, driving but here. Drive safely, Striker. 10 and 2, as they say. Mrs. Webster, hello. Ronaldo. With your last video, I admit that you're the goat. That's a sheep, isn't it? What the Billy Goat's gruff, right? That's too sheep-like. I'm assuming that GOAT is an acronym. Hopefully you're not referring to GOAT as in Mr. Mephistopheles from the Shakespearean play, because that certainly wouldn't be so good for old Jeff. Okay, so now I got some questions coming in. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. If you're new here, welcome. Please ask questions, and I will get to them. If you start to get down deep in the chat and I haven't caught up, please wait or check back with us. YouTube will publish this after the fact. Or if it really looks like I'm not going to get to your question, then put it in the comments for this video and I will answer it later. Hot rodders and modders. Oh, hold on a second here. All right, that's the first question. How to recover from throat pain. Okay, hot rodders and modders. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. If you're getting throat pain, it's better to address it before it occurs rather than continue to inflict the damage and then try to recover from it. So look at your airflow, look at your vowel alignment, look at how you're navigating range. If you're belting, consider how much beyond your secondo passaggio you are ascending if you are. Assess glottal attacks, assess hydration. All of those things can result in throat pain, and any one of which could result in pain. But your pain will be better resolved by looking to the sources and trying to ameliorate the sources before you inflict it. Now, once it's happened, a lot of those things still apply. Hydration is important. Vocal rest may be incredibly important depending on what you've done, and that may mean even taking time off from speaking too much. Things like speaking on telephones or speaking in loud environments can be really, really hard on your voice, and I would advise you, if you're in pain, to avoid those if possible. If you cannot avoid it, then the notion of an ounce of prevention becomes even more important, that it's better to avoid it in the first place. Hello from Toluca, Mexico. Can you give a tip for getting strong mix voice? Thanks for your videos. If you want to have strength in the mix, that is largely a result of vowel formation and resonance. So one of the biggest things about that is to make sure that your vowels are aligning throughout the various ranges of your voice. So start off in your thyroid-rytenoid dominant singing voice in a very comfortable area and work your way up from there. If you are not applying good subglottic pressure, or airflow is a more common way of referring to that, then that will compromise the strength of the sound of your voice in the mix area of your voice. So alignment and airflow are your friends. BRCMANO, hey, never watched one of these, but checking out today. Brilliant. Mandy, drive safe. 10 and 2, typing at stoplights. Okay, I think that's kind of cool, but I want to caution you to be careful and obey all posted rules. Ronaldo, I had hoped it was greatest of all time. I did not want to be presumptuous, but thank you very much. Rager, hey, it's been a while since I popped into one of your live streams. Welcome, and thank you for popping in today. It's good to see you. If you have any questions, please, that's what we're here for. Natasha, when you choose a song to sing, how do you know if it's suitable for you or might be too advanced? That's a very interesting question. That's a very, very interesting question. And I think there's two ways to look at this. One, so if you can just immediately sing it, then obviously it's well within your skill set. But you want to be a little bit more objective about it than that. So you might say, oh, I can really sing this. Record yourself and then have a listen to it a day or two later and see if that plays, if that is in fact true. If in fact you can in fact sing that song. If you listen back to it and you're like, whoa, that's not quite what I thought it sounded like, then it might take more practice. I really, really like to advocate taking on tunes that are outside the limits of your capabilities. This is one of the ways that we can learn about what we still need to learn. So, some clues though, if you're following along with the music and you find that you consistently don't get the licks right, like one lick is supposed to be here and another lick is supposed to be here, and they're kind of similar but different, and you never quite get them sorted out, that's a pretty good indication that something there is you haven't learned everything you need to learn about the tune. It's obvious if you're feeling strain or if the tune just ascends outside your range. But those are things that I think are good to note and then work on, rather than just dismissing the tune. It may be some time before you perform the tune, but I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at the content of the tune, wisely assessing what is in the song, and then working on the individual licks, individual sections of the song, with an eye towards eventually getting it all together so that you can perform it or record it or just learn it for your own edification, so that you learn more about your voice and about how to work on tunes. And the more that we do that sort of thing, I think it just expands us both technically and artistically. Mandy Cummins, graceful. Thanks, Ronaldo. Jason Ray, hello. Jeff, the chat is different in YouTube today. I cannot figure out how to see you and the chat at the same time. That's weird. I wonder if I hope I haven't done something weird. I'm using Firefox this morning instead of Chrome, but I would hope that that wouldn't have anything to do with it. I don't know. I'm just kind of clicking around here to see if there's anything that I might have missed. Seems like everything looks okay. Let me know if that continues for you, JC's Radiant Ray, and I'll see if there's something else that I can change. David Walsh, happy Thanksgiving to you as well, David. Thank you. How you think of the tenor full range and extended range singing ranges? What notes are you speaking of? That's a really good question, and this applies. David here is asking this in regards to the tenor videos, but this applies to all of the videos, except the notes are a little bit different. So for the tenor range tessitura, full range includes transitioning over the secondo passaggio. So those videos will go at least to G4, G above middle C. Extended range will go at least to C5. So the reason being is because this lets you, with a reasonably good amount of accuracy, figure out how much of a workout or depending on your level of advancement is, to pick appropriate warm-ups. So if you're not particularly adept at going over the secondo passaggio, then you can pick any video that does not include full range or extended range in the title, and it will stay below your secondo passaggio. For most tenors, that means staying below F4. If you are getting over the secondo passaggio and you want to practice that, then full range will go, I think those go mostly up to A4, but they will absolutely go at least to G4. Extended range goes at least to C5. Some of them, I think some of those go as high as F5 for the tenor Fach. And that goes for all the rest of the videos and the various ranges as well. It's just that, for like a soprano range vocalist, then if it's not full range, the ascent will stop around E5. Full range will go to, I believe, A5 in that general kind of vicinity, and then extended range will go beyond C6. Amy, hello! It's so nice to hear from you. It's been forever. Mrs. Webster, welcome to BRC Mono. Mandy Cummins is asking JC's Radiant Ray if the video is in cinema mode or regular mode. Hans Peter Pedersen, I just want to say big thanks. Big time, you have changed my way of thinking and vocal training. Awesome. Awesome. I believe I still owe you an email. I apologize for not getting back to you. It's been a really busy week, but I will get back to you. Thank you. Whoa. Martin Perez, I don't get throat pain. I just feel my throat gets really hot. Well, that's interesting. I mean, is it uncomfortable? If it's uncomfortably hot, then something is going on. I often feel like when I'm singing well, when I'm well warmed up, I feel, it's a really silly analogy, but I like in an internal combustion engine, when the oil is up to temperature, it's very fluid, and that's how I feel when I'm singing well. I don't think we're talking about quite the same things, but maybe Martin, expand upon what's going on, and perhaps I can offer some thoughts. Mandy Cummins is talking about cinema mode in the hopes of helping JC's Radiant Ray. Bishy J Official, is opera singing technique better than pop singing technique? If so, why? Very interesting question. Very subjective question. Opera singing technique is meant to get the absolute most like overall efficient and optimized usage of the human voice. Many popular music techniques are more appropriate for getting people who have never sung before started singing. That's kind of about about where that technique, again, this is my opinion, is. The thing about the technique for opera is that we need to adapt aspects of it in order to stay in the popular music genres. And that's what I'm doing with my channel. Is I mostly study classical vocal techniques and apply it to the popular genres. I'm once again reminded of this book that I should have gotten that had beautiful pictures of all the diagrams of the different apertures around the larynx. And that aperture will have a large impact on the airflow over the vocal fold, and consequently the resonances that are created and your ability to sound like a pop singer as opposed to an opera singer. But that is one of the major differences between operatic technique and the techniques that we employ, or the compromises, I should say, that we make to that technique in order to remain in the popular genres. Mrs. Webster, this week I've been going over some of your older videos, so today I don't have a question so much as a thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you. There's some good stuff back there. When I made the guidebook, I was a little bit surprised because, of course, like I've made quite a few videos, and I was just sort of surprised at some of the stuff that didn't have a lot of views but was like really, really good. Unfortunately, the cinematography and the audio isn't as good as the new stuff. Not that my cinematography is like so spectacular. It's usually just a single shot. But yeah, like especially I'm thinking about like the resonance videos, and the daily warm-up is really, you know, like one of the early videos that was that daily warm-up, and it's a very svelte, streamlined warm-up that I think is just as appropriate as it ever was. Thank you, Mrs. Webster. Kat D. Hi, Jeff. I really appreciate these live streams of yours. Quick question. If I'm singing very high, but feel as if I'm pushing it, but it doesn't cause any pain, is that okay, or should I stop? Interesting. The thing about if you're, okay, so let's assume for a moment here that you're belting. If you are belting, but it's not causing any pain, that's good. That may still result in greater overall vocal fatigue later on. And if you did that every night, it might start to wear you down, and it might start to hurt and might start to cause greater problems. That's a lot of assumptions. Let's assume for a moment that you're not belting, but that you're feeling that push as a lot of lift and engagement abdominally. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The main problem is if you are above the secondo passaggio and you are belting, then it might not hurt now, and it might start to hurt later on. However, as long as you're mixing that up with other modes of singing high notes, so like let's say you're belting a few notes, but then you're making smooth transitions elsewhere, and maybe sometimes you're also using a little bit of like falsetto tone production or something like that. You know, the human body is a remarkably resilient thing, and it's when we do the same thing over and over and over, and that thing is bad for us or not entirely good, that's when we start to have problems. I'm reminded of like, you know, like if a tennis player has a swing that's slightly off, and they start to get a little tennis elbow, and they don't correct the swing, then it can get worse and worse and worse. And you correct the swing, and then it ceases to be as much of a problem. It may even go away entirely. Linda Yusuf. Hey, I'm 13 years old and I do sports. So there's a lot of yelling. I love to sing, but I feel like I'm developing vocal nodes. How do I know if I'm developing it or not? Go to your ENT. You're 13, so you'll have to talk to your parents, but they, if you are concerned about developing nodes, then the only thing that you can do is go to see an ENT or an otolaryngologist. Your general practitioner may or may not be able to weigh in on this. They will probably have to refer you to an otolaryngologist or an ENT, that's ear, nose, and throat specialist. They'll be able to take a look at your vocal folds and see if there's any type of nodules forming, or if there's any kind of lesions or hemorrhages or things like that. So yeah, take care of your voice. Take really, really good care of your voice. And if possible, maybe, just skip every other shouting thing or something like that. I don't know what sport it is you're playing. And I know sports are fun. It's fun to get excited and get with the team and yell and stuff like that. Or if you're doing something, maybe it's a solitary sport, I don't know. But take care of your voice too. JC's Radiant Ray at Mandy Cummins. Mrs. Webster at me. You are so patiently answering all our questions here. When most of them are answered on your channel, are you often tempted to ask us whether we've looked on your channel first? No. No, I'm not, because because sometimes we have to learn what we don't know. And I have been there enough times myself to know that sometimes I don't know what I don't know. That seems silly to say, but that's how I look at it. And furthermore, I came up, and I was in university when I forget the name of this book. It's probably because I didn't finish it entirely, but it focused entirely on various modes of learning. I always want to say it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That is not the right book. Now, that's a good book too, and I've read that book. But this book was specifically about the different styles of learning. And it talked about, the kinesthetic learner who has to like touch and feel and do things. And it talked about the that's going to be the only one I remember right now, is the kinesthetic one. But it talks about like the sort of visual learner who has to see it. It talks about the auditory, like all these different modes of learning about things. And if you flip that, then what you come up with, or what I come up with, is the way that I have presented the material is almost certainly not appropriate to every style of learning. So, since I don't know who's asking the question, I assume that the way that the material has been presented thus far gets them close, perhaps, but doesn't quite satisfy the answer. And so I try to look at it from another angle, or explain it with a different analogy, or do a demonstration or something like that, in the hopes that I can communicate in a way that is understandable to whomever has asked the question. That's how I think about these things. But thank you for asking that. Normal Cinema and Full Screen Mandy, that's Mandy still in the hopes of... JC's Radiant Ray, are you still not... Oh, okay, you did fix it, groovy. Martin Perez, hello from Guatemala. What is the best way to extend my range, both high and low? I'm a bass. With tones to shake the very earth itself. The bass vocalist. The low range of your voice. In general, start from the middle, work your way outwards. Focusing on airflow and vowel alignment is a prerequisite towards range extension. So assess that in the most comfortable, casual area of your voice, and then begin to extend downwards. Downwards, you may find that your voice is going to respond differently from mine. So in general, and this is a big generalization, so please take it with a grain of salt, the lower notes, we can allow for a slightly less amount of subglottic pressure. The higher notes require more subglottic pressure. We generally think about this in terms of airflow. Lower notes, a little bit less airflow, a slight amount more vocal fold engagement. Higher notes, more airflow, a little bit less vocal fold engagement. Ultimately, the actual rate of flow of air doesn't really change all that much, but the amount of subglottic pressure or compression and airflow beneath the epiglottis does increase quite a lot as we ascend. So, as you extend downwards, do your best to maintain your engagement and suspension of the air column you may find that in the beginning, a slight amount of separation of the vocal fold will enable you to access a little bit more of the range, and you'll be able to fine-tune that as you practice with it. In other words, it's going to separate slightly, and it might get a little bit airy on you for a moment or two. Balance it with the vowel alignment and carry on. As you ascend, there's a bunch of videos on my channel about extending the range upward. There's a lot of that. But the main thing to start with is to just start from the top down and start with the assurance that you are absolutely in your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. Now, for a bass vocalist, this is probably going to be anything that's could be like C4, above C4. So make sure that you're starting, like the exercise is going to be octave arpeggios. That's the one to start with, in my opinion. And just be certain that you're in your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. If you don't know what that is, you might have to listen really carefully to the demonstrations that I do in the videos, or you might need to maybe get a lesson. I do them all the time on Skype, and I can show you how to do that. But it's all in the videos too. You just have to listen really carefully and consider that the sound may be different from what you've created in the past. And you also have to know that it's not going to stay that way. The point of that overbalance for the cricothyroid sound when you begin is to really, really know that you're in the CT, cricothyroid dominant voice. Also, I have planned my upper register singing course. I need to shoot it now, and that will be available now in 2018. So, but if you want to know more about that, jeffrolka.com is my website. You can get on the email list, and you will hear all about the course once it's released. Also, I'm now an Amazon influencer. So all this, like, it's mostly books and equipment things and stuff like that. But if you're ever curious about recommendations for microphones like the lavalier mic that I'm wearing, or the books that I recommend, if you go to Amazon, I think it's like Amazon, I don't know, I could, if you ask me for the link, I'll post the link on the website or something like that, or I'll send out a newsletter with it. But you can find out all these recommendations for the books that I recommend, some equipment choices, and also some fun items. I've got the fun page on the website, which has a bunch of different stuff, including Ready Player One, which is really a fun book. So yeah. Hot rodders and modders, power build. I think I just addressed that a few minutes ago. You may have already heard it, or you may want to go back. I want to move on because I'm reasonably certain I'm getting really far behind here. Now I've lost my place. There it is. Okay. Yeah, I've gone far. I talked about that a lot. Mainly airflow and airflow and alignment are going to do a lot for that. That's what's going to increase the resonance, which is going to give you the kind of power that you were probably looking for. Ronaldo, also when I say last video, I mean the warm-up pentatonic scale 78. Wonderful, Ronaldo. Wonderful. Yeah, I need to do more. I want to do more of the pentatonic stuff. It's a very good way to expand range because of the both scale-wise and skip-wise motion that's in those scales. And the sound of the pentatonic scale is very evocative. So I think this is just my opinion, but because it's easy to remember the sound of the pentatonic scale, you know, like most of us recognize it. That makes it easier for us to anticipate where the next note in the scale is going to be, and that is critical for upper register. If you want to be really good at your upper register singing, the ear training goes along with it. We have to develop that sense of where the pitch is, so that we can just make that association again and again and again and anticipate it adequately. Michael, hello. Karina, hello. Mandy Cummins, I'm being a good driver, Jeff, I promise. Good. Be a good driver. Rager, I had a dream about driving last night. It was so unsettling. I did not enjoy it. Rager, at me. I'm not sure if my voice is permanently damaged because every time I sing, my voice gets super tired and uncomfortable, even when I'm in my comfortable range. What could be the reason? I don't know, man. But But if super tired and uncomfortable, see, uncomfortable, in my mind, uncomfortable is one step away from painful. Now that could be incorrect, but if that jives with you, then you gotta go see your doctor. You gotta see an ENT, you've gotta see an otolaryngologist, someone who can actually look at the vocal fold and verify that there is no damage to the vocal folds in a comfortable register. You see, when you, okay, so it's really hard to say. You know, it could also just be that you're using way too much vocal fold engagement, and that you're not balancing the muscular engagement around the vocal fold with your airflow. Okay, so try the daily. I just mentioned this video a few minutes ago. There's a video of mine called the Daily Warm Up. It's older. I think the male one, the male vocal ones are like 14 or 15 minutes long. Try that one for a little bit. Don't stop singing when it goes above your secondo passaggio for a week or two, and see if that happens. Or try the diaphragmatic warm up, because I'm wondering those videos. The daily warm up is more about sort of brute force airflow engagement. The diaphragmatic warm-up is more dynamic engagement of the air column. But my suspicions are that if you haven't done something bad and you still need to see your ENT or your doctor, that's your first, you might need to see them before you even know if it's safe to sing. But yeah, I'm thinking that more overall engagement to get the process started of balancing out your singing in your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, and then see if that helps at all. And if it does, then you've got your answer. If it doesn't, something else is perhaps the problem. Yeah, and sometime when recording I have too much phlegm and it ruins the session. Is there a way to clear the throat? Some friends of mine use ginger tea and honey, but I don't find it effective. Yeah, you may have to experiment a little bit. Ultimately, hydration, you could try and do a saltwater gargle, like with a tepid salt water, and it's going to be kind of like not very nice salty, and that can do a lot to clear out the throat too. That's one of the go-tos that I will go to if I'm really having issues. Of course, one of the things to do with phlegm is to try to avoid it in the first place, so maintaining good hydration before, in the days, not just the hours, but the days. If you're recording on a Wednesday, start thinking about it on Sunday, Monday. Staying well hydrated. I don't mean like drowning yourself in water, but well hydrated. Careful about diuretics like coffee, tea, Coke, alcoholic beverages, anything like that. Anything else that's phlegm-inducing. Myself, I often talk about spicy foods. Avoid spicy foods. If dairy is a problem for you, then avoid the dairy in the days preceding the session and see if all of that helps. Because if there's, and you may also want to consider your rest. If you're rehearsing or practicing a lot in the days prior to your session, then your voice is going to quite naturally create more phlegm to coat the vocal folds while you sleep and begin the regenerative process. So if you're recording sessions on a Wednesday and you've got band rehearsal on Monday and then you're practicing the parts all day Tuesday, well, guess what? Wednesday, you're going to be pretty phlegmy. Often, like in these sessions, oftentimes when I get to Saturdays, I'm really phlegmy because I teach quite a lot throughout the week, and that's something I have to consider if I'm doing any recordings. So all of that, the saltwater gargle can be helpful. That's something that works for me. You can try it. Tepid water, not hot, not cold, tepid. And again, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Think about your preparations for it, because ruining sessions is horrible. I mean, especially if you're paying for a studio, you're wasting money and you're wasting time. And wasting either of the two of those is not awesome. JC's rating Ray at Mandy. Martin, hello from Guatemala. What is the best way to increase my range? I think I just answered that a second ago. Yeah. Okay. Fabulous, JC, you're welcome. Susan, how much time should I allocate for warm-up before performing? Varies so much. You know, to offer a generic answer, you know, somewhere between 15 minutes and a half an hour is probably a good amount, but you've got to gauge what is successful for you when you're performing. So if you go and do a 15-minute warm-up and then hit the stage and you're like, that wasn't really so good, then, you know, you might need more. It also depends on the gig you're doing. If I'm doing a half an hour club date, then I'm gonna be like, I want to step on stage being really, really warmed up. So I might sing for 45 minutes before I get on stage. But if I'm doing a 3-hour bar band, cover band gig, I might not warm up at all. And instead, what I might do is plan the first 4 or 5 songs so that they're all super easy. And I can just relax and sing the tunes and get the monitors dialed in. And then, you know, after I've gotten 5 songs in, I'll be fine. So it depends a lot on what your personal feelings are, how you warm up, and also I think the gig that you're doing. But in general, 15 minutes to a half an hour is a pretty good place to start. Would I sing a song? I've never heard your singing voice. Well, one, you can check out the Berkeley Piano Club stuff. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube right now. I have often said that I would sing songs here before, but I don't, because that's not really what I'm here to do. And I get so many questions that I don't want to miss the questions. So I don't want to seem evasive, but maybe the thing to do is to figure out a different forum where we could all do performances. I tried this a couple years ago and ultimately moved on from it because it didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. But maybe that's something we need to consider. You tell me, would it be helpful for us to maybe think about a forum of some kind where we could do performances? And you know, you could do performances, I could sing a few songs, we could all sing songs. I tried to do that before. It was going to be the global open mic. I mean, it didn't really pan out the way I wanted it to. James, happy Thanksgiving. What exactly are overtones? Let's see if I can demonstrate that. Okay, this is C5. This is C4. Okay, now, hopefully this will be loud enough to hear. If I take C5 and I press the key down, now you don't hear anything, right? But I've lifted the damper off of the strings. Now I'm gonna hit C4 pretty hard, but the thing is that C4 has the overtone of C5 as its first partial. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna hear C5 ringing. You can hear it there, hopefully. I don't know if you can hear that or not. And that's what an overtone is. Now that's pretty obvious, like, oh, well, that's a sympathetic vibration. Yeah, that's kind of the idea looked at from a different way. Like if you've got a snare drum that's vibrating sympathetically with like a bass sound, it's because the head of the snare drum is tuned to a note that is included in the overtone series of your bass guitar. But that's also why it doesn't vibrate all the time. It only vibrates for that one note, or like, you know, like the walls will vibrate for that one note. That's because the wall happens to be tuned, if you will, to that frequency. But when you get into overtones, it gets more fun when if I hold that C5 open again, and again, I hope you can hear this. But now I can hit, let me think about this here. I have to think carefully. I can hit F3 and C5 will ring. Yeah, that's really, really quiet. That's the next partial, that's the next overtone in the series. So the idea with overtones is that any given note serves as a fundamental. That's a fundamental. That note also contains within it this note, I can make it ring. It also has this note. This is A. Hopefully you can hear that ringing. The next one is here. And so on and so forth up the overtone series. The overtone series is why high notes on the piano sound thin to human ears, because those notes as fundamentals, the overtones are outside the range of our ability to hear them. And so the piano starts to sound like tinklier or thinner in that range. But in truth, to a dog or another animal, or if you could take your ears and extend the range, then the top notes in the piano would sound just as rich as the middle range. Conversely, the low range, when you listen to those notes, it sounds like it's flappy. And that's because those notes, the frequency, the rate at which those strings vibrate, is very close to what is called the human smear factor. The human smear factor states that anything that occurs more than 20 times per second is perceived as a steady state or a steady sound. So if you can take a string and vibrate it more than 20 times a second, you will hear a v instead of a but the notes at the bottom sound kind of like that because we can almost hear the individual swings of the string. I love acoustics and things like this. I know I took a long time with that. Thanksgiving, I answered the overtones. Jeff, what is another question? What is vibrato? Vibrato is an oscillation that occurs in the voice. When you have really good alignment of vowels, when you have really good coordination between your subglottic pressure, your airflow, and the amount of engagement at the vocal fold, they'll start to kind of, there's an instability that you will feel, and that instability you can kind of lean into it a little bit and you'll get your vibrato. Ultimately, it's an oscillation in pitch. Justin, what advice do you have to get better breath support? I have to kind of go into my speed round here, but basically I would highly recommend you check out the Apogeo breath management system. There's a couple videos on my website about this, and the diaphragmatic warm-up or the daily warm-up and the breathing warm-ups all have practices to help you start that process and get better overall engagement or breath support, and that's going to really, really help your voice. Vibrato, you spelled it correctly the first time, Natasha. Aaron, how to help with people with auditory processing disorder or dyslexia. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you love the videos. Gosh, I must admit, I'm really sorry. I will have to look into that. I do not know what the effects of dyslexia are on auditory processing. I will have to look that up and get back to you. Please let me make a note of it. In the meantime, if you are seeing a physician or doctor, they may have some help for you as well. I have a high speaking voice, this is Justin, but a low singing voice. Is this uncommon? I don't think it's terribly uncommon. I would have to hear your voice to really know what was going to happen. Hard to say whether or not it'll get higher with training. With training, you'll certainly be able to access more of your upper register. That's one of the things that we work with in vocal training. So you should expand your range with time. But I don't know ultimately what the differences are, having never heard you. Aaron's got some smiley faces. Martin Perez, what is the zona de passaggio and secondo passaggio? The zona de passaggio is the area between your primo passaggio and secondo passaggio. For a male tenor, that is typically C4 and F4. It varies for each of the different Fox. The zona de passaggio is where the thyroarytenoid musculature is allowing the cricothyroid musculature to engage and elongate the vocal fold. Doing so allows you to get a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio. The secondo passaggio is the top of the zona di passaggio. It's the topmost point where it's easier to look at it from the perspective of the bottom. It's the point where the cricothyroid dominant singing voice is the cricothyroid dominant singing voice, where you've entirely left the zona di passaggio and you are no longer in this middle zone. I must admit, I'm not entirely sure if there's a certain degree of... No, that can't be right. I would have to do a little bit more investigating to understand the specifics around how much engagement of the cricothyroid muscles. Basically, what I'm wanting to say is that if the secondo passaggio is the point at which the cricothyroid muscles are fully engaged, it may be that we have full elongation of the vocal fold at the secondo passaggio, and that is a more appropriate way of couching it. But off the top of my head, I don't recall either of those being referred to. So I just wanted to go back and thinking about it. Like, I'd want to look that up before I really comment on it fully. But the secondo passaggio is where you are fully cricothyroid dominant. You're out of the zona di passaggio. The secondo passaggio is usually referred to as the break. It's usually where untrained vocalists will skitter off the vocal fold, get the vocal fold separation, and they'll start singing in falsetto. Good, Aaron. I see that your name is Aaron. It's in the user ID. Mrs. Webster, back to the range question for a sec. Is there a performance range versus a functional range? Very good question. Just because I can make it up to A5 doesn't mean it's performance worthy. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I usually refer to it as ultimate range versus usable range. Same idea. And most of us, I advocate for people exploring more and more of their range, whether they intend to perform there or not, because the extremities tend to inform the middle zone where we're going to be performing from. Nick Grigsby, Jeff, do you personally ever find yourself using notation for laryngeal vibratory mechanisms? No, not so much. I use the musculature names. I'll say TA dominant or CT dominant. I believe those markers, those are used in the CVT method, but I don't use those regularly. I probably could. I would want to look into that a little bit more closely just to make sure there were no conflicts. But in general, no. I like to talk about the musculature, and I like to talk about notes on the piano. Is usually how I'll refer to things. Nick, in reference to registers, I mean like M1 being chest. Right? Yeah. We understand. We understand one another. No, I'll talk about chest voice as thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. I don't know what the best way to do this is, but what worked for me was when I began to understand the muscles involved in the operation of the mechanisms, I began to understand registration events and vocal registration much better and how things worked. And so in my mind, referring to the musculature, though it means we have to learn the names, it makes things clearer, and it removes this kind of middle layer of like interpretation. So I don't have to say like, M1, which then you have to interpret as, okay, that's chest voice, that's thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, that means XYZ. We just go straight to thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. But to someone who's used M1, M2, M3, I'm sure that becomes just as easy to associate with the various registers is what I'm talking about. Martin Perez, it's not an uncomfortable heat, but I get it more as a strained. Well, if you're straining, then something's not right. and you need to assess how you're phonating in that area. Mandy Cummins uses tons of my older videos and loves them. Wonderful. Thank you, Mandy. I appreciate that. JC's Radiant Ray, same here. Thank you, JC's Radiant Ray. I really appreciate it. The Albanta 100, new user ID, welcome. When I sing following a sheet, my endurance is lower than when I sing by heart. How can I work on it? Honestly, what you might do is do like sort of line by line memorization. That can help a little bit, but ultimately memorization's the gold standard in terms of optimizing our vocal performance. It just means that you have committed the time to learning the material, and you you have that much more ability to focus on singing and your alignment and the use of your vocal mechanism. But one of the things that might help you in the short term, before you have it fully memorized, is to look at the next line, scan the next line of music, and then look up. So you're just doing a line, and then you do a line, and then you come up, and you do another line, and you come up. No, but I digress. But read that line, and then be upright so that you're relying on your memory for that line. It may not ultimately help all that much. Again, there's not a lot of substitution for memorization. You might also, but one of the other things too, having said that, you might also notice the physical sensations of your body and your posture and alignment while you're singing from memory, and then try to remember those while you're reading off of a sheet, and try to adopt them. I am coming near the end of our session here. If it looks like I'm not going to get to your question, please post it in the comments section so that I can answer it after the event is over. I want to thank you all again for subscribing if you've chosen to do so, and for all the questions. I love the questions. Yeah. Is there a Brandon Macadlo? Is there a certain diet I should follow in singing daily? Whatever works best for you. This may mean some experimentation, and more important than the experimentation is paying attention to how your diet affects your singing voice. I might also at this point throw in that, our bodies are connected to our voices, so your diet and your health and your exercise levels and things like that all play into this. And I'm of the opinion that a healthy body equals a healthy singing voice too. So give some consideration to that as well. Karina, when you belt, does your voice come forward or backward? I was being told once by a music teacher that belting would make the sound go towards the back of the skull. Is this true? As a general rule, I don't belt. When I do demonstrate belting, it feels just as centered as anything else. It doesn't really feel like it's forward or back. Karina, I'm sorry, that's not particular. I don't know if that's particularly helpful. Goodness me, I'm way far behind. I had no idea I was so far behind. So yeah, it's, in largely too, like, talking about the physical sensations around singing is almost entirely subjective. So what feels forward to one person may feel back to another, and vice versa. The main thing about belting is I advocate not exceeding a major second above the secondo passaggio. This is in the interests of health and avoiding any more fatigue than you're going to endure anyway with the belted voice. Staying focused on your engagement so that you're only using as much musculature as is absolutely necessary to maintain the thyroarytenoid dominance in that range. And I think there is a video or two about belting, but I've largely just explained what belting is in answer to your next question there. Martin Perez, when I was in choir, my teacher would not let us speak for 2 days before our concerts to save our voices. Does that actually help? It might. but I wouldn't personally recommend that. I would have you warming up gently and just covering the range that you need to cover in the concert. Cat D, by very high I mean when I'm working on my widening my range. Gotten all the way up to C6 in my head voice. It almost felt like I was pushing, but it didn't hurt. Maybe it was just unfamiliar. Probably. And also the sensations are as you're getting closer and closer to the flageolet register, the sensations begin to change again, and it can feel the dampening can feel like pushing a little bit, which occurs on the vocal fold when it abducts as you get into the flageolet register. You're not quite. Depending on your vocal fock, you could be getting into that area, and that might also account for that feeling. Mrs. Webster, at me, you once again demonstrate why you're my hero. I'm a mom of unique learners. What's the book, Mrs. Webster? Can you tell me the book? Because I keep on feeling like it's that parachute book, but that's not. It's not the color of your parachute book. It's something else, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of that book. And the more I think about it, the more I want to reread it. If you know what I'm talking about, I would love it if you would either email or pop it in the chat here. Dawn, hello from Bay Farm. Yeah, it's kind of sunny. It's kind of trying to break through. It's still early, so hopefully it'll break through. Happy belated holiday to you too. Hello, Giuseppe, Hot Rodders. Already answered that. Hot Rodders and Modders, Giuseppe. Amy Lott, I recommend Jeff's lessons. I have only had one. Want another, Jeff? We'll send him a wonderful Amy. That'd be great. Jason's Rainy Ray. Jeff, it seems there are not many low bass voices like Senor Perez or high soprano voices in pop culture. Are these voices hard for audience to relate to, in your opinion? I am a curious George. This, in my mind, this is a chicken and egg question because there are certainly exceptions to the rule. I'm thinking of, I believe it was Crash Test Dummies from back in the 80s or 90s. Crash Test Dummies had a bass vocalist. But there just aren't that many. Even most of the female pop vocalists are in like just the upper edge of the tenor range, and then the male vocalists primarily sing in the tenor range too. It's all this stuff between like here, like those 2 octaves. It's like the 6th below middle C, and then the 10th above middle C is where the vast majority of pop music seems to exist. I don't know how it ended up that way. I don't know if we can, if it's like the Beatles or if it's just that range. I mean, one of the things about that range is that in that range, almost all female vocalists can sing along with it pretty easily, and most male vocalists will be okay, or they'll sing down an octave, and they'll be perfectly fine. And that might be part of the reason why it occurred that way. But it's really hard to say. I don't know. I've never read anything or come across something that says that range is objectively the place for us to be. From an arrangement standpoint, in terms of guitars and drums and basses and things like that, it exists in a fairly middle ground. So on the one hand, it's really, really easy to bolster it up with like an acoustic guitar, but it's also easy to leave it alone and get above it with like an electric guitar or higher up on the neck of an acoustic. Obviously, the pianist can easily stay out of that range to give it space or jump into it. Bass and drums are largely out of that area, so it's no big deal. Jason's Ray, do you recommend hotspots on Amazon? If you're talking about the personal monitoring devices, I've used hotspots in the past. They are good. I would like to, if you would send an email, if you want to talk more about that, send an email and I can take a look around. I'm almost certain that there are other devices that may be more or less suitable. It would be helpful for me to know more about your individual circumstances as well, so that I can make a good recommendation about the equipment. I love talking about equipment. I'm always happy to do it. It is important to me to make sure that I recommend the most appropriate device within your budget. Karina Chen. Yes, I would love to know that book you mentioned too. Thomas, hello. Hello from Brazil. Does a bigger Adam's apple mean a deeper voice? Interesting question. I'm not entirely sure. I suspect it may, because that may reflect somewhat on the overall size of the instrument. But I don't really know. I might have to look into that. Karina Chen, what makes a singer a great singer as compared to just a good singer? Wow. Fascinating question. Fascinating. Gosh, today's been amazing. Today's been absolutely amazing with questions today. What's a great singer? I think a great singer is one who has incorporated their technique so much into the way that they sing that it has become seamless and is no longer considered in their performances. And so they're left the ability to focus entirely on integration with the ensemble, or if they're singing a cappella, integration with their instrument and making the music. A great singer knows their instrument well and chooses their music wisely. A great singer also chooses their audiences wisely, so that they're singing the music that feels authentic to them, and they're doing it to an audience, with an audience that will receive that, rather than trying to force it on an audience that would be possibly, unreceptive or ambivalent. Yeah, this is an interesting question. That we could talk about that for years, and never come up, I think, with a definitive response. But I certainly believe that there's many facets to that. Rager, am I putting too much pressure on my throat? Possibly. If you're having pain regularly, yes, probably. David Walsh, why do you think some beautiful voices become harsh or lose range in singing at volume without a microphone? Always seemed to me a beautiful tone allows one to get away with a lot, in opera too. If you're singing without a microphone and you begin to push, the harshness is almost certainly an over-engagement of the thyroarytenoid muscles, and that will immediately account for losing range as well, because the cricothyroids won't be able to elongate the vocal fold if the thyroarytenoids are engaged more like that. Typically, the problem with singing at volume is that we focus too much on the creation of the volume, and we make an association between a loud noise and engagement here at the throat. But unfortunately, that's largely counterproductive. We need the voice to resonate sympathetically with itself in the soft tissues of the oral cavity in order to have the voluminous kinds of sound. We can best affect that by focusing more on maintaining and increasing subglottic pressure or airflow and engagement, such that this stays released and is allowed to vibrate freely. And then you'll get that volume without losing your range nor getting harsh. No worries, Rager. How can I find my mix register? I would check out the videos on how to sing high notes on my channel. That will begin the process. Jeff noticed via Skype I was having some problems physically recognizing ENT. I did have had surgery. Oh my goodness. Wow, I'm so glad I told you to see the ENT. Goodness me, I'm glad that you are recovering. Amy, I'm so glad that you're recovering. That's really great. Wow. Andrew Brown Jr., I've had difficulties with the lips exercise. Just hang in there. Is that something to correct? Lips just tire, otherwise just lose flexibility. Yeah, you might be flexing this a little bit more, trying to burble the lips instead of using the airflow. If you haven't checked out my method off the jeffrolka.com, you have to sign up for the newsletter. but I don't send out that many. But that'll get you free access, and I go through establishing and using the lip trill at length. Also, there's a lot of exercises in the diaphragmatic breathing warm-up with the super lip trill, and that might help you get a little bit more release there. Is vocal fry bad for you? In moderation, no, but approach with caution. I love Takis. Spicy food struggles. Yes. I don't know what those are, but they sound good if they're spicy. Are pianist mode vocal practice good for you, and can I help you improve head voice? Perhaps. As long as you are supporting adequately, then it might very well help you access your cricothyroid dominant singing voice. Oftentimes, if we're trying to be too loud too soon, then we don't really get the cricothyroid voice. Amy Lott, thank you, Jeff. Seriously, you're the only one who noticed. Now we go back, look at old YouTube videos, and we can all notice you're the best. That's so... Thank you, Amy. I'm so glad that that you were able to do that and you're recovering. Wonderful. I hope you could hear the overtones. It's much more effective, like when you can like sit down at a piano and do it, or just like sit down with somebody who knows how it does. But the overtone series, from any given fundamental, it's octave. Then it's going from that octave, it's a perfect fifth. Then from that you get a perfect fourth, which brings you to the second octave. Then you get the major third, the next fifth, and then it really starts to break down. I think you get the minor seventh from there, then the next octave above it. JC's Radiant Ray, yes, I was anxiously waiting for Jeff's answer to the overtone question. Great question, indeed. Yeah, and thank you, Jeff. You're very welcome. When recording using headphones, the result is sometimes flat, which is not the case when I sing without headphones. Turn the volume down or put one, I should just have them right here. See if this will reach. Turn your volume down or try doing something like this. One on, one off. Oftentimes, if I'm recording, I can do something even like this. But it depends a lot on your mix as well. But yeah, if the volume in the cans is too high, it's really easy to push, and that's the most likely cause for you going flat, especially if you're not flat when you don't use headphones, synonymous. Start with that. Yeah. Facebook group, Sequencer, A Global Voice. Overtone info was great. Music and science class, absolutely. Here, science is cool. Science is cool. Thank you, Stryker. Drew Two Fish, thank you, Stryker. Awesome. Stryker's got the link up for the Facebook group. Please go, and if you want to continue the conversation, get on there. Awesome. Guys, I'm so sorry. I have to go. Please, if you've got questions that you still want, please pop them in the comment section, and I will answer them a little bit later on. Thank you so much, everybody. Wonderful, wonderful session. Take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing. Find us on Facebook. Get on the newsletter at jeffrolka.com. Thank you for choosing to subscribe. Take really good care of your voices. Justin, I'll see you next week. Actually, I won't be here next week. No live session next week. But I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.